Considering the abundant evidence on the Shroud of Turin, why is it not more widely known? How does the secular world account for its existence? Your information on the subject is great, but I haven't heard much about the Shroud elsewhere, not even, and this is always interesting, not even in Catholic circles. Thank you, and this is Patrick from Kentucky.
Great question, Patrick. To be frank, there is one principal reason why the Shroud kind of fell off the radar screen, and that was in 1988. There was a carbon dating that was done by 3 reputable labs, one at Oxford, one in Zurich, and one at in Phoenix, Arizona. And when those tests were done, it was revealed that the Shroud had been produced probably in the 15th century. Now, of course, I was one of the people who suckered for this 100%. I thought these are 3 reputable labs. The people who took the sample must have been reputable. I gave my assent over. Now, I had been a fan of the Shroud prior to 1988, had been following the STIRP investigation, the Shroud of Turin Research Project, the big 1978 investigation, the volumes and volumes of data that were produced. And then in 1988, I was mind blown. I just couldn't believe it because the reputation, was so strong for the Shroud of Turin. However, I found out about 15 years later, so this, in 1998, already it was known that the single strand that was taken for that 1988 testing, that strand was very defective. And the reason was it was taken, first of all, from a very problematic part of the cloth. It was a corner of the cloth that had been visibly patched later in the 15th century by sisters that were trying to patch the cloth and put a back cloth on the linen after the fire of Chambray, excuse me. And when that happened, these fibers were woven into it. Now, what was found out later, this was probably in 1998, Sue Benford and other people actually showed that this part of the cloth was highly controversial. The second thing is they were supposed to take 7 different samples from 7 parts of the cloth and have them tested by a pyrokinesis expert and a materials expert before the samples were actually sent in to make sure that they belonged to the linen. None of that was done. A single thread from a highly controversial corner of the cloth was taken, it was split into 3 parts, and then sent to the 3 reputable labs, where of course they get the result of the 15th century. However, when Sue Benford did her reporting, then a group of the physicists who had been working on it, and especially this fellow, Dr. Raymond Rogers, and he was really a physical chemist and a thermochemical expert, and he basically was able, by locating where the sample was taken from in the 1988 dating, they had cameras on the cloth. They could see precisely where it was taken from. He then got fibrils from the cloth that were taken in 1978 from the exact same spots. He then took those fibrils and identified the following 3 problems. First of all, he subjected those fibrils that were taken from the exact same spots, he subjected it to several different thermochemical tests, and he elucidates every single one that he put it through. But at the end of the spectrometry, the pyrokinesis, et cetera, when all the tests are completed, it's very, very clear that the sample that was taken could not have possibly been from the original linen. First of all, the sample that was taken would have had cotton in it, and there wasn't any cotton at the time of Jesus, and certainly there wasn't any dyed cotton, and certainly not any dyed cotton that used a gum dye mordant, which only came into Europe in the 11th century. So for all intents and purposes, the sample, right, which would have had cotton, dye and a mordant to tie the dye to the cotton. That wasn't available until Europe much later. This couldn't have come from the original linen. And the cloth, by the way, is not cotton. Of course, it is linen. And it's a linen that corresponds to the kind and the twill and the weave that would have been available during the time of Jesus. So at the end, Ray Rogers, and then, of course, a variety of other chemists and physicists since that time have already discredited the 1988 carbon dating sample. Not the dating itself, that was done authentically, but the sample itself was clearly, a sample that was almost, I can't say it was intentionally designed to deceive, but it came as close as you can possibly get to intentionally designing to deceive. But like I said, I didn't even discover this myself until 2004. So I was way behind the times, and so I think all of us really suckered for this dating, and now we just got to change all that because there's been 4 other dating tests and a variety of other things that we'll talk about later that show that the shroud was really created around 50 AD.